Hello and welcome to a United Kingdom overview for units, unit prices in supplies, the importance of supply, and kind of upcoming unit specialists, steps, all that stuff. Which can also be helpful in the base game, but to know the stats and stuff, but it will also mainly apply to our Viewers Elect playthrough. So, first off, we have our regular old traditional British infantry step. It's 5 prestige or 5 supply per step, and it has a base attack of 2, base defense of 3, movement of 3 plus 1, and no armor value. Next up, of course, then we have the armored unit, and this one's the most complicated of all the units because each armored step is comprised of 1 infantry component and 2 armored equipment. And so the total cost is 15, in our case supply, but 15 prestige per step. And that's the most amount of math that is involved in this. Next up we have sort of the airborne or elite troops, and the way that we will be approaching this is having it be 10 supply per step. And it must either come from, or must be kind of born out of a veteran or elite existing unit. We won't make airborne troops from scratch that start with green experience because I don't think that's how it would happen in real life. That you go like, oh, we can either take these trained troops who kind of know what they're doing and then move them into an airborne or elite program, rather than just going like, hey, new recruit, this is your first day. We're establishing a new program that we know nothing about, and you have no special abilities or anything. So that's how we're going to be handling that. So once we get into like Tunis or beyond Husky, those scenarios, you will have the option to try to form or get airborne/elite units going. And the one advantage for them is that their attack is 1 better and their defense is 1 better than the basic British infantry, so they can punch harder. And of course, if they are then airborne, we would want to be able to land them in, with paratroops and stuff. So it'd be good to have some elite units in the army. Currently, we do not. Now let's go to the not more important, but very important element of specialists. We have the 25-pounder artillery. It helps with defense. It adds a nice little 6 defense, and of course +3 artillery. So it's always a good one to have. A lot of our units have these because they're cheap. They only cost... Oh, I didn't put the prices for those ones. But I put the prices for everything else. I can quickly look it up, though. Oh, gosh. Alright, for 25-pounders, the cost is 25 supplies. So, still a bit pricey, but cheaper, just a hair cheaper than some of the later things. Next up is the 17-pounder, which does add some attack, and they are really affordable. 10 supplies each. So like 10 prestige if you're in the base game in each scenario. So yeah, it gives us the same defense, +6 defense, but it also gives you an attack against armor, at least an ability to fight off some armor, and then +2 attack. So you can't go wrong with the 17-pounder. At only 10 supplies, it's a good way to augment whether they're veteran troops or green troops. You cannot go wrong with that 17-pounder. Now here then we go up to the M7 Priest, 30 supply. Whoa. 30 supplies. It is an artillery, although it's about a third less powerful in direct artillery fire than the 25-pounder, but offers the same defense, and another strong bonus is the unit can move and attack with the artillery in the same turn, where because the 25-pounder is towed artillery, it has to take a turn to set up and be ready for on the next turn, or ready on the AI's turn to defend. But it will be suppressed if you move it, so it won't be good on the attack or trying to bombard or suppress an enemy, whereas the M7 Priest A little less good as direct artillery, but you can keep your forces going very mobile. So that's what you get with that 5 extra supplies. Next up, we have the Engineers, 30 supplies. These are, they're good for attack, better for defense. I mean, they're both a good amount. 6 is not bad. 8 defense is also great. But they also can break up units, entrenched units or fortified units. They can help lower their fortification. So they're good units to have on your frontline units when you need to push up against the enemy there. At 30 supplies, they can be a bit on the expensive. I mean, they're all pretty expensive. 30 supplies, that's the cost of an entire British unit. So basically, it doubles the price of your unit, but it's going to be good. And one thing about casualties, while we're talking about these units, you can kind of see that they move around in the step order. The closer to the front, those are the casualties that get taken first. So that's one thing to be careful of having just having engineers on a green unit might not be the best unless you have other things like, say, a 17-pounder and a 25-pounder. That way you have a better shot of breaking through the enemy and not having the engineers get wiped out, because that would be bad for a newer unit. Next up, we have the Churchill. This is a basically heavy armored specialist unit. 8 attack, 8 defense, plus 2 against armor. At 30 supplies, of course, a bit hefty, but it is a good, if you're going up against armor and you want to just keep punching into the enemy, can't go wrong with the Churchill. Next up is the Daimler. At 15 supplies, it is a very cheap way to augment your attack. Not the best on defense, does add a little bit against armor, and is really good for scouting. If you have units moving around on the flanks around the enemy, and you want to capture enemy hexes, the Daimler, because it is a scouting unit, has some sort of ability where you're able to grab more hexes. It's like your presence is a little bit further. So if you have basically fast running units, maybe you'd want to have an M7 Priest with them, and then maybe a Churchill to have a little bit more firepower. The Daimler is going to make sure that you have good attack and can stay pushing forward as a recon force. And then finally we have the Commandos. This would just be if you want to add heft to a unit that doesn't necessarily need to be specialized in anything. Maybe you don't need them to have artillery, maybe they're moving in the second wave against units that aren't fortified anymore. That's where your Commandos are going to come in. Just 8 attack, 8 defense. Overall, just going to add a nice bit of punch to your units. Now let's get to the HQ. HQs have levels. This will only start to affect the playthrough as people level up above, like the level of captain, the rank of captain. Once you have 3 or 4 or 5 units, then you'll want to be able to, or I'll allow people to start thinking about forming their own HQs, basically their own private armies. Nothing has ever gone wrong in history with private armies. You have 3 main indicators, which is your engineering abilities, your logistics abilities, and your operations abilities, or branches. Each branch has 3 levels, and each level has different costs. When we get to that stage of the playthrough, then I'll fully run down the costs. But just know that each HQ is a little bit different. And so the British, they're level 1 engineering. You've got your repair bridge and destroy bridges. Your level 2 is with the pontoon bridge, river crossing, and entrenchment fortification. Then your level 3 allows you to have assault crossings. With logistics, level 1, you have your emergency supply, level 2, a motor pool, and then level 3, a supply dump. Then with operations, you have suppressive fire and no retreat for level 1. For level 2, feint attack, set piece attack, and rear guard. Finally, level 3, counterattack and recon in force. So, we will go more into what that all means in the future. But also in the future, we have a few more step types, as well as So the British, I think, are the only nation that, as we get deeper into the campaign, they get a whole new unit for armor, and it will automatically replace our existing armored units. It is basically, this is the UK Armored 2 in the files, and this is the UK Armored 1. And the biggest difference is the defense and sort of just armor rating itself. The current armored units that we have right now have 5 attack, 4 defense, and 4 armor, whereas the armored rating, this value times number of active steps. Oh, let's see. The armor total. Alright. So I think that adds to armor shift, makes them better in combat. It's good to, I don't know, the higher numbers you have, the better you are. But anyway, so I think it's about midway through Italy or something, basically coming up towards D-Day. All of the British armored units will just switch over to this model automatically. You don't have to worry about it. It won't cost any supplies. It'll just be that the British have access to these types of armored units. So their armored units will start looking like this. And that'll be a ways away, that's far in the future. But they're just a little bit better, and that's good. Then we have what's known as the DD Sherman, which I think is the Donald Duck Sherman. They're, I believe, Sherman tanks that are designed to be able to go through, a little bit amphibious and stuff, cross rivers and things. So they've got a solid attack, improved defense, but 6 defense, and then +1 armor. And these are all, the steps we're going through right now are steps that you won't be able to get for your units yet. Currently, the way that I'm approaching it is you can have extra steps and specialists based on what you could have in the vanilla game. So as we get deeper into the campaign, then we'll have more of these steps and specialists available for us to purchase with supplies to actually augment our armies. We don't get to start with the quote-unquote best stuff. We have to start with whatever you'd have in the base campaign as well. Next up is the Firefly, a specialized class of Sherman tank, I believe, or it's at least closely related to the Sherman tank, and its defense is through the roof. And its anti-armor is through the roof. If you need to attack, this will help you attack, but if you need to defend, especially against armor, can't go wrong with the Firefly. Then we have Hobart's Funnies. That is a sort of classification of names of different specialized tanks, I believe, that could cross trenches or tear up minefields and stuff. I could be very wrong, but I think that's why they got the nickname Hobart's Funnies. But I believe they're just, let's see, I'll Google it right now. Hobart's Funnies. A number of unusually modified tanks operating World War II and specialized with specialists from the Royal Engineers. They were mainly used on and around Normandy. You had the Crocodile, Churchill tank with a flamethrower. You had a Avra, Assault Vehicle Royal Engineers. You had a armored ramp carrier, the Tank Crab, the Duplex Drive Amphibious Sherman tank, a light. So just lots of different bulldozer attachments, ramp attachments, all kinds of attachments, and that they fell under this broader tag of Hobart's Funnies. So it's just going to give you more attack, more defense, and +2 against armor, as you're just sort of augmenting that unit with specialized tanks that can help in various situations. And then finally, the Marines. Now, they're not as good on the attack as Commandos with their 8-8, but the Marines' 6 attack, 8 defense are going to be a good addition to any force, especially special forces, potentially. Maybe you'd send some as I guess Marines aren't airborne, they're seaborne. But anyway, maybe some naval landings. The Marines might come into play as we get later into the campaign. So those are things coming up. And then, of course, one last rundown through the existing steps that we have, that as we get deeper, you'll be able to use your supplies to specialize your units more directly without me doing it, not for people, but right now I'm just making the choices for everybody. Once you're getting up to 2 or 3 units, basically captain rank, you'll be able to more control what units you have and what style and what specialists they have, and really just be able to customize your units to fit the role within the army that you want them to fit. So of course, 25 pounder, or I keep calling it quarter pounder. It is a 25 supply specialist, good at artillery and defense. 17 pounder, 10 supplies, good at defense and against armor. The M7 priest, 30 supplies, good at defense, good at artillery. Engineers, really good helping you attack and advance, but also pretty good on the defense, 30 supplies. The Churchill, great on the attack and defense, helps against armor, 30 supplies. The Daimler, just 15 supplies, plus 7 attack, adds a little bit of armor. Will take casualties though, because it's right up front. It's a recon unit. And then finally the Commandos, 30 supplies, helps with your attack and defense. Alright, so that is a overview of the United Kingdom. We will be doing overviews of all the Commonwealth forces as we get more enlistments. And we'll be starting with New Zealand, because we do currently have a New Zealand officer. But as more British officers enlist, or as people show interest in other Commonwealth nations, we'll bring in overviews of those forces and steps, as well as then the United States. And then once we have American officers, we'll start going through the sort of American side. There are a few, not minor nations, but basically you have US equipment, and then the nations that use US equipment and specialists and steps. And then you have the Commonwealth, the United Kingdom, and all the nations that use their steps. We'll explain that in a later video. If you've enjoyed that overview, then be sure to go over to twitch.tv/SirSquire, where we have our live playthroughs, where you play a direct role in how those playthroughs unfold. That is also where you can send supplies to the units over on our YouTube campaign. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss a beat in this Viewers Elect campaign. I'll see you all on the battlefield!